call to order and roll call, please.
Commissioner DeVries is excused. Chair Frederickson.
Here.
Commissioner Goss is excused. Commissioner Hunsaker.
Here.
Commissioner Keith.
Present.
Commissioner McCoy.
Here.
And Vice Chair Shores. Here. We've got a quorum.
Will we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? And Mr. Hunsaker, could you lead us in the...
Pledge allegiance to the
Thank you. All right, approval of minutes, the regular meeting minutes of May 8th, 2018.
I'll make a motion to approve. I'll second.
Motion, I need a second.
I'll second.
All righty, a motion is made, a motion is seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, item 2, consideration of public comments. Those wishing to address the Planning and Zoning Commission need not request permission in advance. Action taken as a result of public comments will be limited to directing staff to study the matter or rescheduling the matter for consideration and decision at a later time pursuant to ARS 38-431 ET All. Richard, and you have, there's no, any public comments? All right. Richard, you have the reports for...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Under reports, we have the items that were before you last month. These went to the council. All 3 were approved. The abandonment case for portions of the right-of-way at 3rd and Oak Street was approved. The tiny house ordinance was also approved, as well as the rezoning case over on Wallapai Mountain Road. Oh, and I wanted to also mention, probably the time to do it, is that the items that will be on the agenda later this evening under new business, just the rezoning cases, those will not be heard by the council until July 17th. The council canceled the July 3rd meeting, so those items that will be heard on July 3rd will be heard on July 17th. So it's just so you know and the applicants are aware of that.
All righty. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
All righty. I guess now we have on item number 4, old business, continuing business discussion regarding cargo containers. Staff presented a discussion item at the last meeting related to cargo containers. Staff presented what the current allowance is and possible revisions for cargo containers allowances within the city limits. Staff presented the idea of allowing cargo containers to be used as storage only in certain residential zones due to an increasing demand by the public. After discussing this item and hearing public comment, the Planning and Zoning Commission requested staff to conduct further research and make a copy of revisions to the initially proposed ideas. Sylvia?
All right, good evening. I did do just a little more research, but this seems like this is more clarification, if anything. So here's our discussion item for cargo containers. And as mentioned at the May meeting, staff presented a discussion item related to cargo container allowances in residential zoning districts within city limits. Staff reviewed what current zoning ordinance allows, what property owners are requesting, and some basic research. After discussing this item and hearing public comment, the Planning and Zoning Commission requested staff to conduct further research and make a couple of revisions to the initially proposed ideas. Just as a reminder, this is what the current allowances are. Cargo containers used for storage are not currently allowed in any residential zoning districts. Cargo containers used for storage are allowed in commercial zones with certain restrictions. Cargo containers are allowed to be used as building material in any zoning district. Cargo containers used as building material have to meet the appearance criteria requirements in all zoning districts now. Cargo containers used as a building material are required to obtain a building permit. Now, I did kind of sort out a few options for you as we discussed from the last meeting. And this option would allow cargo containers for storage in certain zoning districts with a minimum lot size of 40,000 square feet, such as RR, R140, and RMH40. and it would allow for the maximum size storage container to be 320 square feet, which is an 8 by 40, and only one storage container per 40,000 square feet or fraction thereof. It would also allow for more than one cargo container on a lot if the total area of cargo containers is no more than 320 square feet per 40,000 square feet or fraction thereof. We did discuss a little bit about the half-acre lots. So you can do this option in addition to the RMH40 or not. This option would allow cargo containers for storage in zoning districts with a minimum lot size of 20,000 square feet, such as R120 and RMH20, in addition to the acre lots. And this would allow for a maximum size of storage container to be 160, which is an 8 by 20, and only one storage container per 20,000 square feet, and allow more than one if the combination equaled 100 square feet, 160 square feet. Now this is actually, I switched my slides, apologize. So these requirements go for both options. Require storage containers to be located to the rear of the principal building on the property and behind a 6-foot-high site obscuring fence such as block wall or solid fence. Require cargo containers to meet the setbacks requirements of the underlying zoning district. Require the exterior of a storage container to match the primary structure. Prohibit storage containers from being stacked. Require a permit prior to placement of the cargo container on the property in order to allow staff to review if appearance criteria is being met and setbacks. Require that cargo containers used for storage only to be included in the calculation of lot coverage. Require that any material stored in cargo containers be subject to the review and approval of the fire department. Now this is a lapse option that I thought I was at, and that's to keep the current allowances in the zoning ordinance, which allows cargo containers to be used as a building material in any zoning district, but do not expand the use of the containers for storage in any residential district. So we would allow for this, but not just placing a cargo container unit down. There was also a little area we wanted to clarify of the current regulations, such as striking out the word appear similar to and harmonious with related to exterior appearance criteria for storage containers in commercial zoning districts. The revised wording would state that as an alternative to screening, the exterior of a storage container may be modified to match the principal building, and this may be achieved through the use of paint, stucco siding, or other approved building materials. We'd also add that storage containers cannot be stacked throughout the section for consistency, and as storage containers should not occupy required off-street parking, loading, or landscaping areas due to this actually being requested by a few owners if they could. So for tonight, the commission action is you can ask me to bring back more research or take no further action, or make a motion to staff to draft a text amendment to the related sections to allow cargo containers to be used as storage in certain residential zoning districts, or even just clarify the language in the existing section we have. And if you have questions, I'm ready for them.
Any questions amongst?
No questions.
I have one or two.
Okay.
Why are we getting the approval of the fire department to store material in a storage container when we don't do that to store material in a storage building?
Chairman, this is just actually an option after doing a lot of research that was kind of typical of other jurisdictions, including like these options where I added in about prohibiting storage containers from being stacked. So really this revision for requiring that any material stored in cargo containers to be subject to the review and approval of the fire department is something you can approve or not approve.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you.
I'm going to open this up to the public, and I have one gentleman, Mr. Alan Mossberg. If you could come forward and state your name and...
Alan Mossberg, citizen of Kingman.
Thank you,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman Frederickson, Vice Chair, Commissioners, Councilwoman Caress. Good to see all of you. It's been a while. We've been beating this up for about 2 years now, and emphatically, I'm totally against them. Storage container is a storage container, no matter what you do to it. The cost involved to buy it, if you're going to stucco it, put a roof on it, do whatever to make it blend into the neighborhood, it's a heck of an expense. So you're probably into the thing $3,000, $4,000 by the time you're through with all the mess. The biggest thing, I'm always good for something to be said, and my deal on this is that we are not the Port of Long Beach, and I do not want to see the city of Kingman become looking like that. It's just, it's unfair to the rest of the homeowners that are around in the neighborhoods, especially if you live in a little bit of an upgraded area. Even just a normal residential neighborhood, I think it just takes away from everything, no matter where you put them. I did find that, if you want to write this down, 32.100 is the penalties that could be assessed against the people that are kind of thumbing their nose at us, at the city, for going ahead and having these installed on their property. This is something I think that possibly you could discuss this with neighborhood services, put a little meat into it, kick it back to the council. I think in the long run, it may pay for the shortages that neighborhood services is having due to budget restructure. That's about all I got on that one. Just absolutely, I'm against them no matter what. We have one that just popped up off of Southern and Southern Vista Estates. They did paint it. It still looks like a storage container. So please vote no on this. Any questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Please state your name for us.
Wes Maroney, Commissioners, it's very good to be in front of you. I am for the shipping container. Sylvie, I think you did an outstanding job on the rules and everything, and I think it's great the way it is, except for the fire department code. Other than that, I think it's outstanding, and again, it's a lot better looking than plastic covers that people put up in their backyard that have no permits and stuff like that. That looks really junky. And I live where this man's talking about, and I see the shipping container that's been painted, and it blends in a lot better now, and I got no problem with it. And I don't think other citizens would complain about the rules about shipping containers. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Sir? Please come up and state your name.
I'm Richard Ware, a citizen of Kingman. I have also no objection to the containers. When I've seen some of the plywood shanty storage things and the plastic ones that some people have that fall apart in 6 months or less, a storage container is a very heavy-duty unit. It's secure, relatively safe, very useful, and very strong. And they don't fall apart in the weather. They go on ships, travel all over the world. With some paint and some facades, I've seen some really nice ones that have had stucco put on and a regular roll-up door put on the front. Looks just like a garage. And they're easy to transport and move. I have no objection.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other further comments from the public? State your name, please.
It's Gary Waters, Kingman. Yeah, I'm concerned about these shipping containers being used as homes. If you look at how they're constructed, the previous speaker, he was just talking about how durable they are. Pretty much the only way we are able to get trailers out of communities is because after a certain period of time, they break down. Now, if these things are designed to be stacked 6 high or what have you, they're not going to break down ever, you know? Whatever facade they blow on when they first actually put them in a community is eventually going to break down, but the underlying structure is going to stay there, so you're not going to be able to condemn it. So these buildings could stick around for maybe 100 years. I mean, if you go to Chloride, they have buildings made of corrugated iron, and they're over 100 years old, and they're not made nearly as well as these things are. in terms of holding luggage or whatever, or supplies. I'd urge the city to be cautious in allowing this to happen, because you can have a trailer park you can never, ever get rid of. And again, if you don't actually have some sort of standards that you're adhering to in terms of visuals, it's not going to look like the alternative housing catalogs that come out of, the San Francisco Bay Area. These are people that want to live as cheaply as possible, pay as little taxes as possible, and they're not caring about visuals. So anyway, those are my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further comment from the public? No further comments, closed. All right, any questions, concerns from the commission here?
I have a concern. We have hashed this out and hashed this out, over the past 2 years. And I'm really surprised that it's even brought back up. I thought we already covered everything, and I didn't realize that it was open again. But I'm against storage containers in a residential area. For the fact that it will bring down property values if they're not taken care of, and if you do put stucco on them or, build on them, they're going to break down. And who's going to go out there and police that and say, okay, now it really is looking like a storage container when it was originally permitted? So I totally disagree. I do not think that they should be allowed in a residential area. Also, too, for property owners that do live in upper scaled areas and moving in a storage container, if it brings down the property value because it's not maintained to a certain standard, and we don't have the staff to go out there and police it and to make sure that things are kept at those standards. So that's my opinion.
I'll take a shot at it. I think you're making a lot of assumptions that the people aren't going to take care of something. I don't see any difference between a storage unit being maintained or not than a mobile home being maintained or not, or a Walmart plastic shed or a Sears metal shed. It's up to the homeowner to take care of it, take care of their property. And you can't legislate that. You can suggest it, and you can make ordinances all day long, but the reality is that they're not enforced. And they haven't been enforced, and honestly doubt that they ever will be. These can be made to look like anything you want them to look like. They're durable. They're certainly a better option than these plastic things and these plywood things that you see scattered all over the yard after a good solid windstorm.
Yeah. You have
I
a
would
point.
much rather see one of these than than the other.
Well, you kind of said it too. It's up to the homeowners to maintain the integrity of it and make sure it doesn't look like a storage container. And rule of thumb is, okay, they get it all permitted and a few years goes by, and it becomes decrepit. Like I said, we don't have, the city doesn't have the staff or the resources to go out to see that things are being maintained to the level of which they should be. And I just think that these have a place, and they have a place on a ship going across the ocean and not sitting in somebody's yard or in a side yard, and, which it is an opinion, and we all have one. And that's mine, and I do feel that we have wasted or pursued a lot of resources already hashing this out and going over it and over it, and and I just
And I would
I'm
suggest
still
that
opposed.
I would suggest that we're here 2 years later simply because it wasn't done correctly in the first place.
No, I
But
don't
that's
feel
just
that
my
way.
opinion.
Yeah, Yeah, that's an
You say
opinion.
that, it's not,
And one other thing is if they're allowed in commercial areas, it makes no sense that they're not allowed in residential areas with some restrictions.
I think the point of clarification, though, is, like Terry did bring up, we hashed this for a year. We as a commission, planning and zoning, came to a resolution, and I think we were all in favor in how the resolution was presented, and then it got passed off to city council, and they can make the final approval, and it was totally opposite of what we came up with and spent hours and days and weeks hashing this over. So, I mean, like you say, yes, this is why we're back here 2 years later, unfortunately.
Because there's a lot of people in Kingman that use these and believe that they should have the right to have them.
I think the reference to what we looked at before, though, and it didn't go through council, that was more direct. It was a little narrower in scope. It was narrower in scope, and this is more encompassing look at the entire bit. I remain torn on the issue because I think personally, I'm probably with Mr. Mossberg's comments. That's where I am personally. However, trying to take into account, I think, one thing we have to do up here is take into account what we're hearing from the public. And so tonight we had 50-50 split, 2 in favor, 2 opposed. I think we had some town hall comments on it, and those, it was slightly in favor of trying to come up with some way to make it happen. So again, even though personally I'm not necessarily in favor of the units on a residential side, I'm trying to keep an open mind about it and take the input of the public and come up with a way. I think the last gentleman who spoke, or the interesting word he used was cautious. And I think what we have tried and what Sylvia and the team have put together here pretty well for us is at least some structure around a potential cautious approach to introducing them. I've got a couple comments on here, what I'd like to see potentially just adjusted. Sylvia, I think you did a great job capturing. That's awesome what you got in here. But to take into account to being slightly more cautious, there's just a few slight things I'd like to see changed on it. But, I could expound all day. I'll still be torn on the subject. I think it's tough. That's why we're up here for it. But I would like to see us hopefully be able to come to some resolution in favor, not in favor, or whatnot, so that we can keep it moving forward. And again, I'm probably a little bit more in favor of trying to allow some leeway here to try it and see what we get. And then, again, if we're wrong, we're wrong. You learn quickly you're wrong, and then you try and take some corrective action for it. But I'm in favor of trying to find one way through some of these options that have been offered tonight to try and allow it to move forward.
okay, well, I'm kind of with Terry a little bit, but I do want to state that taking caution is really important, because when you are in a subdivision, I just want to say, that has CC&Rs, that's not going to stop someone from putting a cargo container on their property. And then you have to actually file a lawsuit. And if nobody files a lawsuit, the container stays. And so then what? And what if somebody does file a lawsuit? Then somebody's got to try to get the container off the property? CC&Rs are broken, they're broken if nobody sues. So we have a lot of subdivisions, and it was brought up last meeting that CC&Rs would restrict that, but unless somebody's willing to sue to fight that property owner, then the CC&Rs are broken. Once broken, always broken. So something to just be cautious of. And I will I want to state a comment, because I totally understand how people would feel that those are safer and stuff. But, a house in Kingman, in the city, has a cargo container, and that house next door isn't selling. So it's other people that are affected too, that's all I'm going to say. But I do, I'm torn too of making some provision out there, looking at options. I wasn't here before, all the work that they went through. But I know that there's probably an option out there, but like proceeding with caution is, because, if you move forward something, it can be a huge future mess.
As I sat in my office today and had some questions of staff, and I pondered over this, because as my 33 years of driving truck, I too know what these are built for and what their one purpose is for. It's for bringing stuff from overseas on the ships. It's unloaded at the dock, and unfortunately, in today's day and age, there's a glut in the market, and we're getting stuck with these because no one wants to take them back. And so, as my driving around and riding around and getting my exercise, I looked at various neighborhoods in the Rancho Santa Fe area, the Southern Vista area, and so forth. And some of our homes we're the R110s, R18s, and we're butted up to the R120s. And as of right now, they're visible from our neighborhood. And I'm thinking, okay, when the developer starts building these R120 lots, and they're probably going to be a little bit more upscale, their view of the yard behind them is the horse properties, and I'm talking about the homes that are on Seneca in that area, and there's the horse properties, containers and whatnot, and I'm thinking, would I want to look at that? And then you get around in the Rancho Santa Fe and so forth, and as a homeowner, I myself, I wouldn't want to be looking at a container. I understand they're damn near almost fireproof, but the only way I could visually see us allowing this, which I believe, I don't know what the percentage is here in Kingman, but most of our homes are probably stuccoed. And to possibly allow a container to be stuccoed, and I would think you would only for the, I can't think of the proper word, but to install a roof of some sort on these two to make it blend instead of a flat roof, because I don't see any of our sheds that you can go up on Stockton and Northern and so forth. None of them that I believe are flat roofs. They're all got some kind of pitch. So that's kind of my view and my thought. I personally, I don't care for them in someone's yard to see a container unless we could go forward with and require stuccos, and of course it would be permits. And then my next question would be, Sylvia, under our permitting process with a homeowner purchasing a home and whatnot, and say it does get into the deterioration mode, and say a stuccoed container does in that same manner, is there a recourse the city has to make an individual fix or repair?
I'm thinking about that right now. Chairman, I know for other things we do have where if the condition of something is dilapidated, we can request the property owner to do that. So just to make sure we can actually put that as a requirement under these options here to make sure we have that.
That was my question.
And would it have to be engineered? So if we put a pitched roof on a sea container, is it going to have to be engineered? Because the sea container is an engineered structure, and if you start adding weight or anything to an engineered structure, you're actually changing the integrity of that structure.
Vice Chair, I'm going to have some help answering that question. But one thing I do want to clarify is that what we're discussing tonight, correct, is whether or not we want these storage containers, or these, storage containers just used for storage only and just drop on the property with nothing else. Now, we had already allowed today that these can be used as building materials. And so if somebody was to submit this cargo container as a shed with the awnings and stucco, then we're looking at it as an accessory structure that's already allowed. But I do have a building inspector here tonight that probably can help me with those questions you have. Inspector Dave Lash.
This was unexpected, but
Yes.
I'm Dave Lash, Senior Building Inspector for the City of Kingman. Been here 23 years, so the question about the structural integrity of it, those things are built like stout, they're stout. The size of it would not require that. We do have, however, I've seen in the past where they've had two of those structures, and then they had it engineered to have a big metal carport looking thing over top of it, or awning over top of it. So there can be engineering in regards to additional roof loads, but for just a shed type roof or a pitched small roof, we would be more worried about the attachment for uplift and overturn of the roof than we would be for actual weight distributed down to a non-foundation.
But under the permitting process, that would all be inspected, the roof attachment and,
Well, so it gets into the 200 square foot allowance for residential for accessory detached structures and what's exempt by code for a permit. So if it's a special ordinance where we're requiring a permit to be processed, then we could probably include that in that. But that would be up through you guys and through the planning to
but as of right now,
initiate.
yeah, that'd have to be something generated from us and,
Right.
okay.
I have a question. What is the city's wind ordinance, like if for a structure or like an accessory building?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
What is the wind?
The wind?
Yeah.
Well, we have a 90-mile-an-hour wind speed for structural analysis done by structural engineers or records. But I'll give you an example. For like a regular shed-type roof on a porch or even a garage, a simple H25 onto the rafter to the top plates is sufficient to withstand that uplift and overturn of the structure in that location.
Any further questions?
Anything else?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any further questions of Sylvia? Thank you, Sylvia.
Yeah, so I think, looking through what Sylvia's got listed out on here, I would probably be more in option one at this point, which is the larger size from a space standpoint as opposed to getting to the smaller lots. I'd rather see it start there and see if we've made a good, see if in fact we've made a good choice or not before going to the smaller ones. And then inside that, I do think I'm with Scott on that letter I. I'm not sure why we would look exactly what materials people are putting in there. That's probably not right. So I would be with you on striking I. And then on C, I'm not so sure I'm in favor of just paint. I think on paint, it's, I don't want to use the phrase because I can't say the word, but something on a bull at this point. But I don't think you've really done anything with just paint for it. I don't think that's much of a blend in. So I would probably be in more favor of striking paint from it and having that be more stucco siding materials as recommended. And I do think that letter G, requiring a permit, that's a, I think I mentioned that last time, that's a key criteria for me to at least have a review done before it goes forward. So you can put together something that structurally it's permissible, comes to staff, get a chance to review it to make sure that it's meeting the appearance criteria. Go from there. But that would be my pathway forward from trying to be cautious.
And then I also had this discussion too. How can we fairly pinpoint where it's allowed? Because we have properties that are R120 back up to an R140. We have numerous as you go up Stockton Hill all the way up to Northern, where some of our issues are going on right now. They're butting up to Stockton. How can we fairly pinpoint and say, okay, you can have it here, but another individual over here can't have a container? And I'm just afraid we're opening up the wrong can of worms right now to throw this okay to do a test when, you know, Joe down the street that's in R120 say, well, that's not fair because I, you know, chose to buy a smaller lot and we're allowing it in the R140s. I'm at, I don't know, I know, I hate to even see us going down this road again.
I think if you wanted to do a test, and I believe there are R140 lots that have animal privileges and some that do not, you could start with ones with animal privileges because they're most likely to be the ones that want a storage container, and not allow them in just normal zone 140 or I-140 or R120 or R16, so whatever. But you can start with the animal privilege properties and go from there.
And how do we address the people that have already put them in when, as of right now, on item option 3, it says keep the current allowances in the zoning ordinance, which allows cargo containers to be used as building materials in any zoning district, but not to expand the use of containers for storage in any residential district. And this has been in for years. So how do we go ahead and, okay, now tell these people that have lost, you know?
Well, the wording's already there. They're allowed for building materials. So if they aren't going to build something with it, and they are using it for storage, they're already in violation of the ordinance.
But then, so if we come up with something, say we come up with, okay, we can allow it, the storage containers in the R1 I-40s, and they got to be stuccoed, how are we going to, or can we go back to these individuals, say, okay, being that you unlawfully put these in the first place and you're just using for storage, is there a way we can come back and say, okay, you're going to have to bring this up now to code or remove it?
That's a neighborhood services issue, as far as I know. It's enforcement.
I forget the other subject we had about a year ago, might have been longer than a year ago, but we got into the same black hole on the enforcement compliance aspect. And I think my opinion on that subject, it's still the same on this one, which is I don't want to make a decision based on a compliance enforcement issue because that's not really what we do. I get it, it's out there, and but that's, I think, a separate function for the city in terms of whether enforcement and taking care of existing issues that are out there. I think ours is more a going forward function on deciding on the issue, on whether we want to move forward with it or not.
Sylvia?
Yep, Chairman McCoy, I did want to clarify on the properties that have the animal rights. It is actually properties that are in R140 that have 40,000 square feet minimum. So your R140s can have animal privileges, but kind of as you mentioned, Charmaine, that there's some subdivisions that you don't see the animals on because of the CCNRs, and it does tend to work for them in that case, but then there's the R140s on the other side of town that are allowed to house the horses. So I too had trouble, like Chairman Frederickson, trying to say, okay, so what's the best way to figure out where these should be allowed or not once you open up the R140 or R120? I looked at general plan designations, they were the same. So that one, it was difficult for me as well.
Yeah, and I think the CCR subject, I appreciate what you're saying on that. If you have someone that's going to intentionally violate what's prohibited inside a CCR, they're just as likely to violate the fact that we don't allow them now anyway. I don't think that makes sense where you would think that generally, most people, generally, if that's what the feel is for the subdivision or that's what's allowed, most people try and stick to what the rules are for it. But, I mean, opinions differ on that subject. I guess because I'm in the group that I wouldn't violate a CCR subject, but try and follow the rules.
They're violated all the time unless you have an HOA.
Sylvia, can we come up with 2 options and then you guys can go back and review and then we could have it for discussion again at our, if that's what we so choose, at our next.
Well, Chairman, we surely can do that, but I do need to know which options we're going with further, and what would you like to see?
Well, I myself, I mean, I'm more 75% with option 3. But if we're going to want to do a test, I would go with option 1, I myself, and meet the requirements of B. In section C, no paint, I believe just stucco only, with some kind of roof appearance. Allow for the maximum size of storage containers. For D, only allow 1 for E, and then, of course, limit the stack containers. I go along with G to require a permit to be placed or to be picked up. And as far as H, require the containers used for only storage only, if we're going to go down that road. But that's, that's my view.
You're okay with striking I as well?
Yes. Because we're not doing that right now with anybody I know that has an 8x20 wood shed. You can go down to buy anywhere in town.
Put anything you want.
Yeah, I mean, no one's ever checked.
So let me ask you a question, if you don't mind. It sounded like you wanted someone to put a roof on one of these, and I'm not quite sure why.
Only for aesthetic reasons, because you're going to blend in with the house, and anybody that goes buys a storage shed right now, they have some sort of roof. So one way or the other, they're blending in with the aesthetics.
But you could technically right now go build a stick-built flat roof, plywood, and be done with it and have the same thing that's not going to last or near as structurally sound as a container. And it doesn't require a pitched roof or fancy roof or parapet roof. So I don't understand the reason.
I did just my of aesthetics looking, because I think anybody knows what they are when they're coming in, and I think it just eliminates one more thing. But that's,
Yeah.
What's one man's junk is another man's treasure. So, I mean, I myself, I wouldn't want to be looking at anything like this from my yard view, and I'm got to believe most people in Kingman, because we all come to live in the city knowing that we have rules and regulations and guidelines to follow, and if you don't so choose to want to follow those, then that's where we have the open desert out here to live. I mean, it's a society whether we like it or not, and we all have the rules that we must follow, and I think it just makes Kingman more of an attractive place, because obviously in the last 3 years, 4 years, we are growing and busting at the seams, and people are screaming for city services, and along with those.
Yeah, and I just want to make one more note, that there's a lot of new subdivisions in Kingman that are 1 acre, and the developers did not take this into consideration. I'm just saying, those CCNRs, they didn't think about the containers would be brought up. So I'm just mentioning that.
I live across the street from a guy who has 40-foot container. It doesn't bother me. I see it every day, and it's no big deal. I would much rather look at that than I would the options.
I mean, we're all not gonna agree to, it's one of these things, we agree to disagree. I mean, it's like a lot of things.
And where I'm at, the parcels are larger. I'm on 2.5 acres.
Oh, well,
But still,
I think you could poll 31,000 people and get 31,000
Yeah,
different
exactly.
opinions on what's nice and what's not, so, yeah.
Chairman, I'll be glad to do a little more research with these two options and try to make something a little more where you can lean one way or the other for the next meeting.
Yeah, because I think, Sylvia,
Yeah.
take into account on that paint one, if you want other language on it, because I think what we kind of went with, I believe, at the last meeting was, hey, okay, if we're going to look at it and find a way to do it, that's great. We would just like to try and find a way where at the end of the day, it doesn't look like a storage container. I mean, it's still, no problem if you stick them in, as long as we can't tell what it is.
I think that's my thought too. I mean, you know, if someone wants to spend $1 million, so be it. I can't tell them, you know, that's what they want to do, but
Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
so do we need to make,
It's a discussion item, so basically just
so
direct
you,
staff
okay,
to do more
okay.
research and
So
bring it
you'll
back.
review and come back for our next meeting.
Yep, thank you.
All righty, Sylvia, thank you very much. All righty. Now we're on to new business. Rezoning case RZ 18-0004. A request from Bob Boyd, applicant, and Michelle and Heshman, I might pronounce this wrong, Sahawani,
Sahani.
property owners for the rezoning of certain property from R110 residential single-family 10,000 square foot lot minimum to R2 PDD residential multifamily planned development district. The rezoning is requested to allow the development of 2 dwellings with a common wall and a 15-foot front yard setback with the opportunity for a future property split. The subject property is located on the south side of Gates Avenue between Gulf Drive and Western Avenue and is a 1/4 of an acre. The property is further described as a portion of the northeast quarter of the southeast quarter of Section 13, T21N, R17W of the G&SRM, Mojave County, Arizona. Richard?
Good evening again, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. This is a request to rezone a property from R110 to R2 PDD. The applicant is Bob Boyd. The property owner is Dr. Sawane. The request is to allow the development of 2 dwellings with a common wall, as you mentioned, with a 15-foot front yard setback with the opportunity for a future property split. It's located on Gates Avenue between Gulf Drive and Western Avenue. Took a couple photos, kind of a montage of the site. The golf course is in the background. There's a single-family house to the left, and the villas at Surbat Cliffs patio home developments to the right. The property itself is, as I mentioned, zone R120 right now. The property to the west is R2 PDD, which would be the same essentially designation that this property would be. The golf course is zoned O. There's some other R2 zoning just across the street, although it is single-family homes over in that area. And R110 and R16 is to the east, which is all single-family. The property is about a 1/4 of an acre, medium-density residential, 3 to 8 units per acre is the general plan designation. It was annexed into the city in 1971. It's had the R110 zoning since that time. No record of any development on the site. It's not located in a flood zone, although there's a little bit of discussion on drainage that I'll get into in a moment. The access off of Gates Avenue is currently at Pay Street. There is curb gutter and sidewalk on the north side of the street, but there's nothing on the south side, so that would have to be extended at the time of development. This is another view of the site showing the current water and sewer lines in the area. There's water and sewer in Gates Avenue. We posted the site May 25th. Notice was in the paper. Surrounding property owners were notified. We did have 2 property owners commented on the request. There were some concerns about the 15-foot front yard setback and also just the development of a potential duplex on the property if it weren't split in the future. We didn't receive any objections from any departments or agencies. And as I mentioned, the city engineer did comment on drainage. that they would need to retain an engineer to assess drainage and provide a recommendation how to handle flows from the site development. So again, the applicant has submitted a preliminary site plan that I'll show you in just a moment. They would like the R2 zoning with the PDD designation, and that would allow lot widths and sizes to be reduced below the minimum standards in the R2 district, which is 6,000 square foot for the lot size and 60 feet. If the property were split evenly, each lot would be about 40 feet wide and a little over 5,000 square feet in size. The PDD is also requested to allow, as I mentioned, the 15-foot front yard setback, which is 5 feet below the minimum standard, but that would be the same as what's to the west of this property in the Surbat Cliffs patio home area. Staff has no objection to the reduced lot sizes and widths. We are recommending that the lot size not be less than 5,000 square feet and the width not be less than 38.2 feet, which is what you would need in order to achieve 5,000 square feet. The reduced front yard setback, that has created some issues in some places in town where cars will stick out, trucks will stick out into the sidewalk, so that does raise some concerns. But the developer would like to maintain the look of the adjacent development, so he would like his development to be as close to the street as the other existing homes in the area. This is a preliminary site plan showing the site, showing where the future property line would be approximately split, if it were split evenly. Nothing too unusual about the development other than the potential split occurring in the future. As part of your analysis for rezoning the property, the commission is supposed to make findings on the following items. One would be the need for the uses that's permitted. The general plan does call for both infill development as well as mix of housing types, and that would be having this type of residence would be an opportunity to have a different type of housing type in the area. The PDD, R2 PD designation would be generally suitable for the location because it would be essentially extension of the existing district to the west, and it would be similar to this patio home style development in the area. And the development also would be compliance with the density requirements of the general plan. So staff is recommending approval of the request to rezone to R110, I'm sorry, from R110 to R2 PDD with the following conditions. One would be the minimum front yard setback would be 15 feet. All other R2 setback and development standards would apply. The new lots would be created through our minor lot split process through a parcel plat, with the minimum lot size being 5,000 square feet and the minimum width being 38.2 feet. At the time of development, the developer will need to retain an engineer to assess drainage on the property, and 4, an extension of the street improvements would be required at the time of development. So that's the staff's recommendation. I'll be happy to answer questions you have, and the applicant and the property owner are both here this evening as well.
Yeah, Rich, I have one for you. It's
Sure.
complete embarrassment on my part. I did not get a chance to drive over and look at that, and I wanted to. But do the patio homes have common walls? Are they already are?
Yes, it's hard to tell from the aerial here, but
Yeah, I was zooming in on it.
Yeah.
It looks like they are.
let's see if
They do.
They're common. They're common. Okay, I'm good. That's okay. It's all,
And they're all individual.
yeah, these three have common walls, and then there's a gap, and then I think these 2 or 3 have a common wall. So this is actually more like a triplex is
Right,
what it
okay.
is.
Good.
Yeah.
And where's your closest R2? I mean, how far away is there another R2?
Right across the street,
Okay.
although it is not, it's not multiple family, but there is, right here is R2.
That's R2?
but
Or-
they want PPD, correct? Or PDD, sorry.
Right, so it would be, so an R2 district, I think there is still a vacant lot over there. It would allow potentially a duplex, but I think they're intending to split the property, which would be a common wall patio home similar to what's over here.
So the other ones, would be rental. The other ones are homeowners around, or is there rentals? I mean, like,
Well,
R2 is
Yeah,
designed for multifamily, one parcel, correct?
Well, if they split the property, each unit would be on its own lot. It's a common wall. That's, yeah, but as far as the homeowner or owner occupied versus, rental, we don't control that. The zoning
No, I
board
guess what
says
I'm
that.
asking, is this going to be a duplex, or is it two single-family residents?
I believe the intent is to split the property, so it would end up being two separate residences with a common wall
Got it.
on the property line on one side.
That's the only question I was wondering.
I have a question. On the other patio homes, what is the setback? Is it 15 feet as well?
In the front, it's 15, and the rear is actually reduced in some cases here, but they're now asking for less than the minimum, which is 15 in R2.
And there is a sidewalk.
There's a sidewalk to the west, and one of the conditions we're recommending is that be extended. It would have to be extended if this were developed as a duplex. If it's developed like this, it could still be, even if they weren't required to do a rezoning, it could still be required by the lot split itself. So either way, it'd be
To have the
required.
sidewalks
Yes.
and the curbs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you throw the map back up there real
Sure.
quick, please? And that parcel is the only vacant parcel on that street, is that correct? And the other three?
Well, unless this aerial's old, I'm not sure. There is a lot over here. I think it's still vacant on the other side.
The other three parcels to the east of that,
That's a home.
Yeah, these are all developed. There are
single-family.
vacant lots to the south, though.
they're single-family homes,
Yes,
and they're set back 20 feet.
yes.
So
Same
the
lot
reality
size.
is that they're asking for the PDD simply because of the townhomes, and they're trying to blend with those.
That's their request, yes.
Or, on the flip side, they could do the 20 feet and blend with the homes. So they don't need the PDD.
Well, in an argument, you could make to not have the 15-foot setback, other than the concern with the, find the right one here. Other than the parking in the driveway situation is these lots are actually a bit deeper than the patio home lots by about 5 to 10 feet. So
Right.
you could, you could fit a reasonable sized unit on that property without having to, have a tiny backyard, I think, in most cases, so.
There is an issue with parking on the townhomes with the 15-foot driveways. And most anybody that lives in that area will tell you that the full-size pickups and the big cars are hanging out over the sidewalk. And, the 15-foot, in my opinion, shouldn't be allowed, especially when it's not really needed. He has the property to do it the way it should be done.
So, in the diagram here, we require a 30-foot setback from the structure of the building from the property line? Or it's only, what,
The front yard setback?
yeah, I'm looking at where you have the future property line split, and then you got the back property line as it's showing on our diagram here. It shows, we're looking at a 5-foot, I'm assuming would be a fence away from the structure. So then we got another 25 feet of open space, or is that all part of the?
Well, if you're talking about this area here, this would be all the backyard now. If it were, it originally was drawn at 20 feet here, so actually, if this was 15, this would be 35 feet for the backyard.
Yeah, so the drawing we have is drawn at 20 feet, correct?
Yeah, I think the version you got in your packet, unfortunately,
Yeah,
was
okay.
the one that didn't have the,
Okay.
yeah. So, but this dimension would change to, assuming this is the length of the structure, would change to 35 feet.
So can the structures be moved back farther, or that's,
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly, recommend that that they adhere to the normal R2 standards, and, like I said, there's room to
that's, okay,
build
that's-
on the property without that.
He has the space to build it
okay, that's my question.
without the PDD.
Right?
All right.
Okay,
Any further questions from commission?
okay.
Thank you.
Richard?
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to open it up to the public, and I have one request to speak, is Russ Petty? Petrie? We,
Commissioner and Commissioners, Sandy, a lot of years. My years.
could you please state your name, sir?
Bob Boyd, owner of Redondo Builders.
I'm Mr. Sahani, owner.
What we're looking to do is pretty much in line with what is already existing. We're simply finishing the project. And from a standpoint of the 20 feet setback, that's easily attained. That was our intent to begin with. We merely, in looking at it after we submitted our application, realized that there was a 15-foot setback in the existing, and we want to maintain the integrity of that existing. So we're trying to tie into those units. We're going to have, for the most part, we're looking at 2-bedroom, 2-bath, nice living spaces, very positive, good-sized garages. And that is our intent. Doctor?
No, I don't have anything else to add except that I think pushing it back at 20 feet to mirror the single home on the other side is, it just doesn't look right. It doesn't match the remainder of the townhomes on the other side of it.
That's been our intent all along, which is more or less to complete that block of homes and blend it in.
Any questions?
I don't have it.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Russ? Please state your name.
Russ Petrie, resident of Kingman for a number of years. I wonder, Rich, if I could have maybe this map up there. Sure. Great. As you can see on the map, across the street it shows R2 zoning.
Excuse me, Russ, could you hold on a minute, please? Can't hear.
Sure.
Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
As you can see across the street, we've got the R2 zoning. It's kind of misleading because in reality, all of those are single-family residences. I think that subdivision was started by a fellow named Kai Trahan back in the 80s, and there are no, actually there are no vacant lots in there at all. There was a house built on the one you thought was vacant and just completed here last month. The R2 PDDs, the townhomes that Bill Nugent built, four buildings, 3 units each. They're all individually owned, individual parcel numbers on all of those. So they aren't really triplexes, so to speak. What the applicants, Dr. Stuhani and Mr. Boyd, are wanting to do here, they're looking for some zoning to put in what I call a duplex. I drove the neighborhood again today, and I drove from the old Safeway to the cemetery, from Stockton Hill to the golf course, all that area there. And there are no duplexes and there are no triplexes in any of that area. And as far as I know, there's no zoning for that. The only R2 zoning is in this area right here. And the only true R2 uses are in those 12 townhomes. What they're planning to do is make this into a duplex, I'm assuming, and a rental type property. and I don't know if that's an appropriate use in the middle of a lot of single-family usages. The applicant also owns a property immediately to the rear, right below, right where the R110 is. And I'm assuming if this zoning were to change to R2 PDD, they'll request an extension of that to that rear lot. This, where the O is, that's a finishing hole of the golf course. That's the 18th hole of the golf course. That's where the green is, right there. I don't know if it's an appropriate use to have multifamily duplexes lining the finishing hole of our golf course. That's something you can consider or not consider. I'm a real estate appraiser. I've been one for 32 years, so I get a chance to see a lot of this. I was on the P&Z for, I think, 3 years, on council for 5, and went to the county planning zoning for a couple of 3 there. So I'm pretty familiar with the zoning and the changes and what people are wanting to do and the results of that. And I don't really feel that this is an appropriate change in zoning. The R110 allows for one house and on the 10,000 square feet. And what they're wanting to do is a duplex, make it into a rental property, and I just don't think that's an appropriate use. Questions?
Realistically, would this not have the same appearance as what the townhomes have?
The only elevation, there's no elevation. All I see is this footprint here. So I don't know what they plan to do there. As far as an extension of the other development, I don't know if that's in a reasonable statement or not. In the existing 12 units there, with the short setback in front, as Scott mentioned, any vehicle, larger pickups, they fall out into the sidewalk, and a foot or two. And with the depth of this lot here that they've got, aesthetically, I don't know if would look good or bad, but I know that the 20-foot would be more appropriate if you so chose to go through with this R2.
Thank you.
Thank you, Russ.
Vicki, is the applicant allowed to re-speak since it's still open? Sir? Go ahead.
With all due respect to the gentleman that spoke, he may be using semantics about as far as duplex or not. The intention is not a duplex. The intention is to recreate the townhomes adjacent to it. And whether it's for rental or self-use, I think that's irrelevant as well. But in any case, the future use for that property is, for one, at least, my older brother is retiring in Kingman from New York, so he'll be in one of those units. The other, the gentleman that currently works at the golf course would like to live in one of those units so he can be close to his workplace. As far as the drainage and the 18th hole, I golfed that place myself, the hole 18, and it's not going to look any different than the existing townhomes currently there. If anything, that parcel is way on the right corner. You'll never get any. It's not going to affect the golfers at all whatsoever. And the drainage, the existing townhomes, they do have, I believe, a 5-foot drainage alongside their walls, and this would be something similar that this property will have. In fact, this property is deeper and wider than the other parcels next to it, the other townhomes. So it's actually more conducive for the townhomes than the existing ones.
Okay, well, I have
All I want to say is, real quick, you had a question?
yeah, so I'm looking at these R2 PDDs.
Correct.
Okay, so will you be splitting that? And so that each side is individual parcels?
What what we're looking at is with potential, the way we've asked for this,
Like
and
the others?
requested this, is to be able to split it, okay, so that we can sell them off to the side. That's going to be done right out of the gate. And whether it's rental, Doc's going to use, his brother's going to be there, and we have an individual that's ready to rent. Bottom line, what we're looking to do since day one is mirror what we have. I even have the same designer that drew those plans working with us, so that we have, in essence, that same mirrored image coming along right down the street. And that was the reason that we pitched forward that extra 5 feet. When I talked to Rich, I said, just noticed it, we're there. We wanted to be able to pull that concept in. Even though that type of design is somewhat dated, we want to make it look the same to blend with that area and to be that and the same in the back. So,
Okay.
Is there any way, and it might be stupid on my part, but is there any way to make it all look and where we can allow larger trucks, like you said, that is a dated property, the townhomes to the west? Is there a way to, in the design, to allow larger vehicles to
20
be
feet?
parked,
20 feet is the least of our concerns.
to be parking?
Yeah, that was, again, it was a change that we made in submission, in our submittal, because we realized, we had drawn it with 20, intending 20, and then wait a minute, we want to try and pull in. What it's basically going to do is just kind of step back just a little bit. I don't think driving down the street, anybody's even going to notice it.
Well, I think that's probably a lot of concerns with most of us. I mean, because everybody jumped off a bridge doesn't mean the last person's going to want to jump off the bridge. So, I'm just, in my thinking here, bring it up to date. If a 20-foot wasn't a problem,
Yeah, but again, so when does that split? I mean, are they going to be, they're going to be separate parcels, like, you see the other ones, they're all different, they're two separate parcels. When does that happen?
We have to have the rezone to be able to apply for the split of the property.
So that can be conditioned?
That can definitely be a condition on our, we have no issue
Because
with that at all.
that's important to the other homeowners that Mr. Petrie has expressed already. That's all.
I have a question for the homeowner. You own the parcel behind of the one that's in, question. Are you going to want to do the same thing with townhomes with that one as well?
No, there's no intention to do that. I'm hoping I would be retiring there so I can drive my car on a golf course, single home.
any further questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions from the public?
Not to offend my possible future neighbor over the fence. My biggest concern is making sure that this is split and as soon as possible. In the packet, it did not say anything about that he had to get that the zoning had to be done first and then split. Is that what it is, or?
Let me just put up the conditions of approval again. There is actually, it is discussed, I mean, we can strengthen the language a little bit in here, but number 2 does say new lots shall be created through the city's adopted minor lot split process. Beef it up a little bit to make it so it's clear that that is a requirement for them to move forward with the development.
Thank you.
But that could be my recommendation.
I appreciate that.
That would be one concern, and then the setback in front due to the vehicles sticking out in the sidewalk. Biggest concern.
Okay.
I've heard nothing but good things about Dr. Suhani, and he likes to do good work, and this kind of clears it up a little bit.
Yeah. Thank you, Russ.
Concern.
Thank you. Any further questions from the public? All right, close it.
I'll make, oh no.
Comments, questions from commission?
Just one. If we go back to the 20 feet, Just want to verify or clarify that there is no need for a PDD if we go back to the 20 feet setback.
Mr. Commissioner, if the commission would like to, disallow the 15-foot setback, the PDD is still actually required because of the reduction in the lot sizes, because of the split. So if that's the commission's, going forward, what you'd like to do, then I would just strike the first sentence in condition 1, just say all R2 setbacks shall apply, and then, the rest of it.
All right, thank you.
But the PD, like I said, is still required.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you, Richard.
I'll make a motion.
Any,
I'm kind of torn on the 15, 20-foot one, because again, I think the way the applicants answered that question as well, and our drawing is showing 20 feet, right? And I know we had the discussion on the truck sticking out, but I understand, I believe what they're going for in trying to maintain the look. And I'm trying to picture in my head, you got how many properties coming along here, and all of a sudden there's 2 that are set back 5 feet further, and then you got a single house next to it. I understand the issue of trucks sticking out and that potential absolutely there. But I do semi-like the idea of maintaining the look of what's on a street for a consistency standpoint. I mean,
Yeah, I have to agree.
that's already what's there, and I appreciate the answer on the already common wall buildings that are there, so there's no difference there. I have played 18, not as much as I would have liked to play Surbac Clits because I like golf course, but I don't think there's any look from the backyard. I can't imagine. I even picture in my head the ones that are along there now. They didn't bother me at all on the driveway, so I think all that's there. But I would semi be in favor of having that at 15 feet and having it match up, but I'm not stuck on the subject. I'm open to
Well,
it.
where I'm coming from is if you come down from Stockton Hill to the west,
Going to the driving range.
and you see the houses that are already existing, they're at 20 feet. And so this project it may visually look like the townhome, but it's closer to the houses, and it would blend with those. And so
I
that's where I'm
kind
coming
of agree. I think we should stay with the setback of 20 feet for aesthetics because I've driven this area too a few times just to make a decision on this. And if you just set it back 20 feet, I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference. And I just don't think we should compromise that 20 feet because of the sidewalks and because of access down that sidewalk. A truck is, 21 feet long, these trucks nowadays, and if you have someone in these townhomes or whatever, they need that access to get down to a store or something, they're rolled curbs. I mean, they're going to have difficulties, and I just think it should stay at the 20, for other reasons.
And they thought so too. When they designed it at 20 feet. So
Yeah, and those townhomes, they have been there since the late 70s or, the early 70s. And, it's, I don't know, I think they are outdated. And that one little area was approved for a 15-foot setback. I don't think we should continue on the same mistake.
I think if we're going to go through with it, I agree too, the 20-foot setbacks for today's standards. I think most people walking down the sidewalk want clear, unobstructed view, right or wrong. The other 15 or 20 that are already there, times have changed, and we do have a 20-foot setback. And it's in the instructions, but I think as we're requesting the property split to be part of the.
It's already in there.
You're not going to move the existing ones, so even if you have that clear walk on that sidewalk and there's a truck in front, you're going to walk around it. So it's more just, to their point,
Yeah,
do you want it to blend in and look like the townhome or not? That's the, if you do, you go at 15. If you want it to look unique and stand out, put it at 20.
I don't think there's going to be, I doubt that you could even tell the difference.
I don't think so either. I don't think, it's
But for
coming,
the
yeah.
purpose of not having it sticking out in the middle of the road, then 20 feet, right?
Do we have a
I'll make a motion.
motion?
I'll make a motion to approve it for the duplex, for the split, and a 20-foot setback.
I'll second.
Right, I have a motion is made, and a motion is second. Any further discussions? All righty, then a roll call vote. In favor?
I'm going to go with no.
In favor.
In favor.
In favor.
Righty. Thank you. All right, item B, rezoning case, RZ18-0003. A request from KTH Consulting applicant and Jeff and Jane Holdsworth, property owners, for the rezoning of certain property from R16 residential single family, 6,000 square foot lot minimum, to R16 PDD residential single family, 6,000 square foot lot minimum, planned development district. The rezoning is requested to allow a 15-foot front yard setback for the subject property instead of the standard 20-foot front yard setback. The subject property is located at 3655 North Lameda Street and is 5,000 square foot. The property is further described Kingman's Airport Tract Lot 6, Block 27, Section 6, T21N, R16W of the G and SRM, Mojave County, Arizona.
Thank you.
Sylvia?
Yep. All right, so I think we pretty much covered this part right here. So this is the applicant and property owner information. I'm going to go on to the aerial map showing the location of the property. It's located on North Lameda Street between Pert and Morrow Avenue. Here's a zoning map showing the zoning in the area of R16. It's mostly R16 and R2 right here, and some C3 along Airway. The way to access the site would be off of Airway and Keno Avenue. There is water and sewer available to the property. The original subdivision was recorded in 1929. The property was part of the original incorporation of the city of Kingman in 1977. The area was zoned R16 upon annexation, and the lots in this subdivision were recorded as 50 by 100 feet. So the building sites are allowed to be 5,000 square feet. We did notify the public as far as posted the sites, put a posting in the paper, and sent notice to the owners within 300 feet. We did receive a couple comments by email. One neighbor did have a concern of losing the view if the home was built closer to the front property line. And another neighbor did not have an issue with the rezone, and I had to attach their emails to the packet. There was no objection from reviewing departments or agencies. In this case, the applicant submitted a building permit application in March to construct a 1,325 square foot single-family residence on a 5,000 square foot lot. A site plan was submitted and the proposed home was shown within the required setbacks. Building inspections were conducted for the foundation and setbacks, which were based off the property pins that were placed incorrectly, which resulted in a pass. So, to rephrase that, the pins were placed incorrectly, not the pass. So in May, the applicant, which is Kathy Tackett Hicks, and she is present tonight, came to the Planning and Zoning Division because she became aware that the front setbacks were not correct and was seeking guidance on what would be the best remedy to resolve this issue without having to tear down the partially constructed home. So staff consulted with the building department, and a building inspector was sent to the site to verify if the required front setbacks were met. I want to show you a couple photos of the site before I continue, and the site plan that was submitted with this application. This is a little bit small, but it does show where I even have to look closer, where the 20-foot existing setback is right here compared to the road, and where the proposed 15-foot setback is proposed, basically. And then going on to thought I had pictures here, boy. Okay, so going on to the summary of events, the building inspector did confirm that the front setbacks were indeed showing at 15 feet instead of the required 20. A stop work order was posted by the inspector. Now, at the time of inspection, the contractor on site said that the surveyor made an error and placed the pins incorrectly. And a part of the confusion for the surveyor was that the majority of streets in this neighborhood are 50-foot right-of-ways, and in this case, the Mita has a 60-foot right-of-way. After the series of events, staff met with the applicant and recommended processing a rezone for R16 PDD for this one lot. And we have processed a similar situation like this back in 2007 when 5 homes were built within the front setback by error. A little bit different situation. The lots were narrowing and the surveys were off by a feet or two for each one of them. But this process is used on a case-by-case basis and not for the regular waiving of front setback requirements. The applicant initially requested to process a variance, but a variance procedure is only used for situations that are not self-imposed, such as terrain constraint would be an example of that. Here are the photos of the site. This is the front of the property. This is what's existing now. There is a vacant lot over to the side here in between this new home and another residence. Here's a side view of the property. This is showing where the pin is now, where the right-of-way ends. And then this photo was taken to try to show you how the foundation is 5 foot forward compared to the other neighbors, but it's very hard to capture, but you can get a general idea. Now here's a little explanation showing that we have a 60-foot right-of-way here. This is the correct pin location. This was the original, where the original pin was placed, so it's closer up. And now we have 9.5 feet instead of 4.5 to the property line back to the sidewalk at this point. So it appears that the proposed PDD setbacks would have little impact on the community or neighborhood. One issue that has occurred, which you did bring up with reduced front yard setbacks, is that larger vehicles, especially trucks, tend to extend into and block public sidewalks when parked on driveways or in front of garages. However, in this case, there will be 24.5 feet available between the garage and the back of the sidewalk due to the wider right-of-way width of Lamita Street. This is the same distance that exists when there is a 20-foot front yard setback and a 4.5 feet between the property line and the back of the sidewalk. Therefore, there should not be an issue with vehicles blocking the sidewalk in this case. The staff does recommend approval of this rezoning subject to the staff report with the condition that the minimum front yard setback shall be 15 feet. All other R16 setbacks and development standards shall apply. And so then I did mention the applicant is present, and if you have any questions of the inspector, he is also present. And questions for me?
I have a question.
Yes.
Now, when this building permit was issued and the site plan and everything was reviewed, and doesn't the city of Kingman, the contractor, don't they have to lay down the footers before filling and before anything else, or?
Yeah, and Vice Chair, I'm going to get the building inspector up for the building division questions.
Okay.
I reviewed the site plan, but I need to ask. Inspector Lash?
Somebody would have been there.
Hello again, Dave Lash. In the wrong. So the surveyor submits a plot plan, basically showing his points of pin setting, whatever they're rebar tags specifically or otherwise. And that is what we go off of. And so when it was submitted in error. And when we inspected it, we pulled off the pins, not knowing it was in error. The registrant surveyor and or his direct people underneath him set those pins, and we rely on them to do it properly.
I have a question.
Once in a while,
though.
they make a mistake.
When, when the building permit is issued and stuff, don't you start with the footers first without being filled?
As far as when we go do our inspections,
Yeah, your initial
we start out with an
inspection.
underground inspection, underground plumbing. Sometimes the railing for the foundation is not up yet to verify setbacks. We verify setbacks when we're looking for rebar, types of footing depth, and distance to property lines for
So
setbacks.
you're looking for the setbacks prior to the fill of the footing frames, or is it after the footing frames?
We do the inspection for setbacks at the same time we inspect the foundation prior to pouring the concrete. So the forms are set, and that's what we have to go on.
And when was this error discovered? Was it after the framing was already up?
It was partially up, corrected, yeah. Yeah, the concrete was actually poured. It was passed by by me, actually. I'm the one that went out there and did it. I verified off the existing pins. That's all we have to go by off of. Those pins were in error, so it created the issue.
You physically do not have to measure like the distances between the setback in the front, the setbacks in the side, and in the rear?
Again, we verify all that off of what the pins have been placed by the surveyor, registered surveyor.
I think what she's getting at, no one physically went out to the property and measured the pins to the property lines. You just went off of the surveyor's site plans.
The person who sets those pins are the surveyor. We require them to be in place prior to a foundation inspection. We verify off of those pins. And if they've been disturbed or missing, we require them to be reset so that we have the proper pins to go off of. So we rely solely on those pins being placed properly.
So the only recourse, I guess, if we were to say, no, you have to have a 20-foot setback, was the owner would have to sue the surveyor in error?
Well, yeah, I'm not going to get into legalities of that, to be honest with you. I'm not a lawyer. However, I go off the pins. Any inspector would do the same, whether it's in the city or the county or anywhere else. They rely on the surveyors to do their setback inspections, make sure they're placed properly.
I mean, he did what he was supposed to do. The pins were there, he measured from the pins. So it all falls on the surveyor, but people make mistakes, so.
Any further questions?
Not at this time.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Chairman and Commissioners, so one thing that I have as I was preparing this case is, human error does happen. And then at the point we were at is that the home was partially constructed. So what were the options that we had? Tell them to tear it down or try to find this situation to work out in this particular case? And may have already had, excuse me, I'm sorry about that. Maybe, lesson learned already just from the situation itself that we do not continue in this direction. But definitely this is where we're at. Partially constructed, how do we resolve this?
What is the homeowner that, you said you got in an email from the neighbor?
Yeah, it's at the end of your packet.
It's on the bottom?
Yes, at the very bottom, there's two.
And what are they saying here?
There's one for and one against.
Yeah. Vice Chair, I believe the complaint was from the neighbor that this home is shown, and there'll actually be a lot in between him and this new residence here.
So as I see in the picture, the fence on the 15-foot lot setback is going to stop at the front, at the end of the house. So there isn't any obstruction in the front, really, except for the 5 feet.
Correct.
So the current owner of the property is Holdsworth?
Correct.
And he is the contractor as well, correct?
That's what that was on the application. Yeah, otherwise I have the applicant present, which is Kathy Tackett.
Okay, because I was just wondering, how did Mr. Holsworth not get that?
We may need to ask the applicant.
Okay, oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Forgive me.
Yeah. Kathy, would you like to come up? Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Chair, Commissioners. Excuse me, my name is Kathy Tackett Hicks, and I'm the applicant. And I just want to clear up a little bit about this. When you come in for a building permit, you do have to have a surveyor supply a record of survey or something. The record of survey he submitted was correct and showed the 60-foot right-of-way. What he placed in the field with his calculations showed a 50-foot right-of-way. Clearly, we come before you with hat in hand. I can tell you, as soon as we were made aware of it, I immediately reached out to Sylvia and said, what are we going to do? We got a problem. And so there was no intent to try to hide anything or try to get away with something. This was the resolution that we had. I thought really pragmatically about development. What are the effects for the community? Would there be any adverse effects? And I can tell you that I don't believe that there are any. Probably the biggest one that the commission and the people in this community might want to address is if trucks were overhanging on that sidewalk. In this case, they're still 24 and a half feet. So there's no problem with that, which is great. The improvements in the street all stay the same. The utilities all stay the same. Visually, it does not jump out at you. It is 5 feet. It is an absolute shame that it occurred. I do hope that you'll approve this request. I did go out when I saw the initial comment from the neighbor who said his view would be obscured, and I immediately went out there, and I don't find that to be the case at all, as you saw from the picture. So there are no adverse effects, still has water, power, sewer. The home was built 95% framed. What he did was add in another 4 or 5 hours of construction for his work to put up the rest of those boards so that there would be no warping or damage to what was already placed, and the contractor stopped at that time until we could get through this process. The city did indicate, and I really appreciate them working with contractors because time is money and you have contracts and everything. We had to do a lot of finagling. The city was awesome in that they did say we could continue to build it, but we didn't want to make any assumptions. I do hope that you will approve this. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. And as you know from the picture, the contractor did not proceed after that framing. So we're waiting, and I'm bummed to find out that this got pushed to the July meeting now too, but of the council. You have any questions or?
No. Thank you.
Thank you.
Since we've opened it up to the public, any further questions from the public? Please state your name.
Hi, I'm Dana Marino, and I live on the other side, or I own the parcel on the opposite side. And my question is, based on the picture you just had up there, I'm sorry if I could. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm wondering why, when the surveyor did it, you could see the poles clear as a bell down the street, how they made such a grievous error, and that happens, and I'm okay with that. My question is, when I want to build on my lot, do I get the same consideration? Can I have a 15-foot setback? Because I can build a bigger building.
Thank you. We all know your name by now, but please state it again.
Commissioners, Wes Maroney. These things happen, and I don't see that the city would like to have this person tear down their home to move it for the few feet. And every case is individual. If this lady wants to have a 15-foot thing, then she just needs to come in and do the paperwork too. This was a pure accident of no fault to anyone, and I think the city, in kindness of the heart, would want to say, well, for this one time, we're going to let it be. It's not going to make any difference. The city still gets tax dollars, and the county gets their tax dollars, and someone gets a home. And I think that's what really counts. We're asking people to move here, and we need new homes. And so I would highly say on behalf of other people, let the house go and build it. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions, please?
I would just like to be clear to council, I have no problem with the setback. I would just like the same consideration when my turn comes.
Thank you. Any further questions from the public? Sylvia, did you? Any?
I have a question for you, Sylvia. So on this building permit, it was a contractor, and the contractor owns the property and the project?
Chairman, we never got that answer, did we? The contractor.
Is this a tract home that he's building in this subdivision? And he owns different parcels in this subdivision?
I don't know that answer exactly, but when we did the list of 65 surrounding property owners, I don't think there were any other parcels. I can check the list, I have it with me, but, so it's not that he has numerous parcels like this.
Okay, so he was building this home for himself, or was he building it for someone else?
I don't know that answer either.
Okay.
But the thing, he does have his own home, because I've been to it when I had to fill out these applications. He was building in good faith on what that surveyor put on the ground. I mean, it really is as simple as that. And I can tell you the surveyor's devastated, and the contractor had to stop. I mean, it really is just a mistake. And I'm hoping you'll see, allow it to move forward so we can carry on.
Further questions? Thank you. All righty. Any comments or discussions amongst us?
I would make a motion, if you need it, to approve.
Okay. I have a motion. I need a second.
I'll second that.
I have a motion that's been made and a motion's been seconded. And any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Chair Frederickson?
In favor?
Chair Hunsaker?
In favor.
In favor.
In favor?
Vice Chair Schultz?
I'm going to go in favor.
In favor? Okay. Motion carries.
All righty. Item C. This one's a good one. Discussion regarding storage of boats, trailers, campers, and recreational vehicles. At the work session of June 6, 2018, the Kingman City Council heard a presentation from the City Attorney's Office on a possible amendment to the Kingman Municipal Code to address the parking of recreational vehicles, camper trailers, and similar vehicles on city streets. Richard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Once again, this is an item that came before the council at their work session on June 5th. The Attorney's Office has been working for some time on a RV and camper and vehicle potential ban on parking on city streets and residential areas. The draft that the council reviewed at the work session at this time would ban RVs and other similar vehicles on city streets and residential areas except when loading and unloading. It would require storage of these vehicles on developed residential lots to be located behind a 6-foot tall site restrictive wall. And then as far as the loading and loading period, it would be 72 consecutive hours, either in front of the house or in the street in front of the house would be allowed. As you may know, we do have within our zoning ordinance restrictions on parking in front yards for boats, trailers, campers, that type of thing. It bans the storage of those vehicles in the required front yards. It limits the number of vehicles to 2 per 20,000 square feet, up to a maximum of 4 on any lot. And it requires the storage similar to the ordinance that the council was looking at. Requires that storage be in a required side or rear yard behind a solid fence wall or approved planting, so it's screened from view from other adjoining residential areas. This ordinance really has not been actively enforced for some time because the alternative in cases where there really is no place for these RVs or other campers to go, especially in the smaller yards, is in the street, because we don't have an ordinance on that right now, and that does create a safety hazard. So the council discussed this at some length. They are seeking the Planning and Zoning Commission's input on this idea, and specifically on whether possibly you'd want to consider relaxing or changing the ban on the storage of RVs and other vehicles in front yards if the council were to move forward with the street parking ban. So this is just a discussion item amongst yourselves and any members of the public who'd like to address you on this.
Any questions for Rich?
Not right now.
I just have a comment because this has probably been my pet peeve since I've been here, and when I got handed our two thick notebooks of ordinances and everything, lo and behold, I found an ordinance, the 26.83 of storage of boats in front yards, and I did contact in my neighborhood or contacted the code enforcement, and it kind of strikes me funny that when the comment here is when it's not available to park it behind an RV gate or whatnot, they can move it to the street. Well, most in my area, they can park them behind their RV gate, and this was neglected. And that's what I'm thinking on it, because I know personally we've had an issue in the past with RVs on the streets, and unfortunately someone was killed, and it's very tragic, and I hope not to see that again, but that's my comment. But any other questions? I'll open it up to the public. I have one request to speak from Carol.
She had to leave.
She left.
Okay. Any further?
Commissioners, Wes Maroney. I worked for the county of Santa Barbara, and they had the same thing. And what I would recommend to you as a few changes that they did not do. It says 72 hours loading and unloading, okay? How do you tell if it's loading or unloading? And they have an extension cord running out to their trailer or whatever. But the main thing is the movement. They need to move the vehicle within 72 hours. And I would highly suggest that you put 100 or 150 feet, because what they would do in Santa Barbara County is they would hook onto the vehicle, we would chalk it, and they just move it enough so that the chalk was not visible anymore. And they stayed there for another 72 hours, and they just kept moving back and forth, back and forth. So I would highly suggest that you put a distance that it has to be moved so that they don't just keep flopping back and forth in front of their home. And the loading and unloading, I probably would just get rid of that and just say you have 72 hours in front, and that's it, and make it a lot easier, because the officer that has to enforce it then has to go over and talk to the people, and I go, well, I'm just loading, and so don't put, if you give him the tools to make his job easier, it is easier. That way they don't have to confront the person and have to listen to people yelling at you and stuff like that. And so put down on there, you got 72 hours, that's it, and you have to move it 150 feet. And that way, but other than that, everything seems to be just in line with what the code in Santa Barbara County was. Thank you.
Mr. Mossberg?
Alan Mossberg, citizen of Kingman. I'm running out of no's, but I have one left in regards to allowing this to be on the street. I own a 30-foot fifth wheel. If I park it out in front of my house, I'm taking up half the street just in the width alone. I live in Wallapai Estates. We have no street lights like most of the town. So you're driving down the street pretty blind. Some of the areas, like the picture that was in the newspaper, they have sidewalks. Like Wes says, now you have power cords draping across the sidewalk, going to extension cords, going to wherever they can plug the thing into. Everybody is, in my neighborhood, is behind the fence, except for one gentleman, and we're working on that. And like Commissioner said, CC&Rs are only worth about the paper that they're written on. You can't enforce it unless you get the neighborhood together to go after that source, which is what we're going to have to do along with neighborhood services. He's about 10 feet from the street, parked in his front yard. The other thing that I'd add to that is a lot of these communities, the families have a lot of kids. That thing's parked out on the street. You got kids running out, they're blind, they're not going to see a car coming. So, like you said on your code enforcement, our code now is 26.830, I found, and it's behind the plane in the front of the house. I like to see remain that, whether it's on the side, depending upon if it's a major street where they can't put a gate in, that's come before us before. There should be a little bit of an allowance that they can do something with it instead of going to a rental yard. But basically, if they've got a gate, it should be behind the plane in the front of the house, and get it away from somebody driving into it, or the kids, or somebody getting hurt out of that thing. Because like I say, we have no street lights, and when they've done construction, we've asked them to come in and put up blinking lights, so when they see a pile of rocks, you're not on top of it before the last thing that happens. Same with what could happen here if this ordinance went through. So tonight I'm here to ask you no. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
No.
Any
he's saying
further questions from the public? No, none be, I close it. Open up for discussion.
Yeah, I don't agree with the, on the, the proposed amendment, draft ordinance, the requiring such vehicles stored on developed residential lots to be located behind a 6-foot site restricted wall or fence. That should be limited to your CC&Rs, because there's a lot of homes you can park nicely on the side of your property. There's plenty of room that is not, you know, we have plenty of properties that look fine with the boat parked on the side of the house. I mean, on the side of the yard. You know, there's a lot of concrete parking just for that. To tell your city that you have to park behind a 6-foot fence when it's not in the CC&Rs is, I don't agree with that. I mean, it's my,
I believe that's already in the ordinance stated
That's
behind.
no, it's proposed change. The draft ordinance is talking about.
No, I believe right now, we do have an ordinance, and whether or not it's is it 226, or is it?
It's right there.
Well, I
Sorry,
think it's
I thought it said it.
interpretation of whether front yard includes driveway.
I think it's out on the street or
Yeah,
the,
both the existing ordinance as well as the proposed change to the city code does mention behind a wall or a site obstructing
Or
fence.
something.
So if there was some interest in relaxing that requirement,
oh,
maybe that would be an option, would be, as Alan Mossberg mentioned, you know, behind the plane of the house, but, you know, in the side yard, so it's not beyond the front of the house. That might be one option, but.
okay. So you're saying, so I may miss that. So it's currently, it's saying that right now in the city Kingman, you have to park behind a fence?
That
a
is
fence?
what's stated in the ordinance currently.
Oh,
Yeah, the current
nobody's
ordinance
doing it.
But
That's-
it's not enforced
yeah.
and never has been enforced.
That's,
'Cause we have homes that
I
are
have
being
a
built, designed with concrete parking along the side of the fence for parking your boat, not behind the fence.
Yeah, like my house.
Yeah, and my house.
I have
We're
a
all in
really
trouble.
long driveway and our
Yeah.
boat's parked back there, but you
Yeah.
can't see it from the street or anything, you know, but it's not behind a fence.
from my belief, that's why this came to us, because we already have an ordinance in place. And
Okay.
it can't be enforced, because then the writing officer could write them a ticket and they can just go park it into the street now. So as I was told in the past, what would you prefer, the vehicle off the street or allow them in the street, in which we don't have, and that's why this has come to us, to come up with a
I see.
resolution.
Yeah, we had it, the neighbor up the street, this happened 8 months ago, had his RV parked out in the driveway, and it was called, and they came by and enforced it, and he moved it. But he was not happy about that fact, which I can understand, because his
Yeah.
driveway is extremely long, but, you know, the neighbor, I get what they had too, because they were like, it's a very tall RV, and if they're sitting, they had a nice sitting area in their front, and they sit out, and they can't see the sunset over there, because there's this very large vehicle out there blocking their view, so.
Well,
It's actually pretty amazing how many RVs and trailers and things that you can stuff into a little 60-foot wide front yard. I took a drive yesterday afternoon, and I won't say where, but there's more RVs and old junk cars in front yards than I ever imagined. At least they're not on the street.
Yeah, they're not, yeah.
Yeah, I don't feel if they're not on the street and they're on your private property and it's, you know, within your driveway area, because I mean, my driveway is probably 65 feet long. It's long old driveway. I mean, I could put an RV there or whatever, but
And
So the option is off-site storage.
yeah, just if it's on your own property, I feel that's reasonable, not requiring it to be behind a fence.
So you advocate that it's okay to stuff it out in your front yard?
Not in the front yard, no, I'm saying
inappropriate
in a
parking.
designated driveway.
yeah,
Not
driveway.
in your
That's-
front yard.
But that's the front yard and the driveway. So I think,
No, my driveway is alongside the house.
well, I think I got my personal, like, there's two views on this. Number one, RVs, boats, whatever is a luxury. It's not that you have to have it, and most people where I lived and came from, if you can afford to buy an RV and you didn't have the property, you knew you were going to have to get on off-site storage. And I lost track of thought of my second thought, but it'll come to.
Yeah, right thing to do.
I got my brain just like,
Here's the issue, and I don't want to politicize this, but that's what's going to happen, is I don't know that the city of Kingman is willing to actually take steps to enforce whatever you do. This is not enforced. It's been on the books for I don't know how long. Last time I was on P&Z, I think we worked on this ordinance. And it's frustrating to spend the time and the effort to work something out, and then the city sits on its hands and doesn't enforce it.
well, while it's in my brain now, my other comment was, I have noticed on social media, and there was probably 20, 25 comments, and I would say it's probably 3-1 in favor to impose some kind of restrictions on RVs, to remove them. And then a second, if we come up with some kind of ordinance for RVs, it should enforce the one that we already have in existence now. Because right now, they can remove them off of their property and park them in the street, and they can't do anything about it. So they don't really have any teeth in the ordinance they have because of that reason. And that's how it was explained to me from the code enforcement officer from the department, that I could write the gentleman a ticket for his RV in the front, but then he's just gonna move it onto the street, and now he can't do anything because we don't have, so I think with us coming up with, if we come up with something here, would give teeth to the ordinance we already have in place.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of allowing them on the street. I do think it's a legitimate risk for young children, the way they move around, and automobile drivers can't see around it. And you have kids ride scooters and bikes, and all of a sudden here they pop out in the road, and if you get the wrong timing, it's not a situation that's gonna end very well. So
I don't think public streets should be used as storage areas for your RVs or boats or whatever. But if you have a driveway or a space alongside your house that can accommodate it, then I don't think we should require it to be behind a gate either.
I'll tell you, Terry, I'm torn on that one, because again, I know the situation right up the street when they made him move it, and if I was a neighbor, I would have wanted it moved too. It was like a huge wall.
I think it kind of depends on the area. You know, because we can use my house as an example, and I have a really long driveway alongside of my house, and then I have my driveway getting into the garage. You know, and it wouldn't block anybody's views anywhere, you know, around. So I think, you know, if you're like locked into a tight subdivision or something like that, and you only have your driveway going into your garage, then I don't think they need to be parking there, but, you know. But
Well, I think what
It's
you're,
tough to write that, though.
yeah, I think what you're describing is probably far and in between, and it's, would be, again, how do you go back and make exemptions for one here and one not there? It's either you gotta have it, you know, one way or probably the other.
I think essentially the easiest solution is basically to write an ordinance that says that if you don't have room off-street to the rear of the property, then you seek off-site storage, plain and simple. Can't park it on the street. If you can't park it behind the house, then you find someplace else.
So then you would be,
Pay to store.
you would be happy with this as it's already ban parking of such vehicles on city streets and residential districts, except when being loaded and unloaded? And
Yes.
require such vehicles stored on development regional lots to be located behind a 6-foot wall or fence?
I don't care whether there's a fence there or not. They
Yeah, I
need to
would
be
say
to the
take
rear of
that
the
out.
property.
take out the 6-foot fence.
I don't know that I'm opposed to the side. Are you considering the side the rear? I mean, if you're level, I mean, that's side, level with
Let's
the
assume
center.
for a minute
Right.
that a front yard is 25 to
Whatever.
30 feet
Right.
deep prior to the construction of the,
So you're saying from the structure back?
Yeah, struck that.
Yeah, I think that's what we're all talking.
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
I
I think
have
that's
no
what,
problem with that.
I would,
But to take up your whole front yard full of RVs and boats, no, that's,
I would comment too, I know my uncle has this up in Pennsylvania, he hates it, but they have a 6-hour restriction on loading and unloading, and they do come out and fine and
Really?
whatnot. Yeah, it's
6
pretty-
hours?
Yeah, he hates it. It drives him nuts, so he would hate me for agreeing with it, but I'm not sure you need 72 hours, that's, I mean, I don't know who's constantly loading and unloading for 72 hours, that's probably, I would probably be in favor of a much shorter time frame than
48?
what's wrong with a day? But in 48, you're at least reasonable for someone's weekend, I guess, I suppose. I mean,
I'm throwing this out amongst this, I'm assuming then if we come up with something, it's pretty much gonna be on a complaint-driven enforcement, so someone, because we're not gonna have code enforcement, I'm assuming driving around and looking for this, so it's gonna be on a complaint-driven and say, hey, this individual's had his vehicle here, so then it's up to the department to go ahead and tag it somehow and
Yeah, but again, then we're basing our decision on this on code enforcement.
no.
I think I'm still on that. I've been on that before. I mean, that's, you have to make, I think we should make the decision that seems to make sense, and enforcement, that's a whole nother
Yeah,
area.
right. I think that's what really it's gonna, would boil down to is,
Yeah, but if you go buy something and there's like cobwebs and stuff like that, I mean, they think those need to go.
I'd probably be more on 48.
tonight, are we having to come up with
Give direction.
some direction for you, or come up with, and then you'll come back with an ordinance?
Well, just to clarify, clarify here, there's two different ordinances that we would be working on. One is with the city code, which is actually, that just goes to the city council for approval, and the attorney's office is working on that. We would obviously want that ordinance to be in harmony with the current zoning ordinance requirements as well. So there may be some requirements or some changes needed to our current ordinance. If, for example, you wish to relax the requirement that they be behind a wall as long as they're behind the front plane of the house. I think at this point, all we're really looking for is some direction from the commission, which direction you'd like to go, and then I can confer with the attorney's office, and we can bring something back to you for further discussion
So.
before it would go to the council.
Sounds like we were potentially in agreement on not requiring it to be behind a fence.
Yes.
As long as it's behind the property structure?
Structure.
Of the pro-
Not parked by the front door.
Right.
Yeah. And then, Rich, we could always adjust it if you bring back an ordinance. I would probably be more in the 48-hour-ish on that particular one, unless there's major objections from the group on that.
That's generous, if you ask me.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. What if you have a 3-day weekend and
True.
you got somebody coming in?
That's true.
You know what I'm saying? So, and you have company or something like that. I mean, I
It's
don't
a
know.
hotel room.
Well, yeah, as long as there's no extension cords running, that's strictly a safety hazard, but.
I mean, if we're really sticking it to loading and unloading, that's not what it's being used for at that point.
Right.
Which is what the neighbor up the street was using it for, was people were living in it for a week.
So then we're gonna ask for vehicles to be parked behind the structure of the
Level, but
Well,
side.
distance-wise, right, from the,
I guess from the front of the
structure.
house.
In
or
front of the house
Or the
is
front of the
fast.
house,
Right.
extending over that
Yeah.
line.
Okay. Because some houses are set back further than the minimum front yard setback, so I think if you said the front plane of the house, then
Front plane house.
that would
I think it'll probably be,
be a uniform sort of standard then.
we wanna look at a 24 or 48 and see what, I mean, I know it's all over the ballpark. If you go to every city, you know, it's like Terry said, it could be 24, 48, 72. You know, it's all over the place, so.
I don't know how much effort it would be to ask to poke around to look, to see if you have some, just on that specific subject, it'd be a quick
Yeah.
look to see if you have
And I
some
do
range.
know the attorney's office was actually going to look at some other ordinances in some other cities, so, but I could let them know that,
Curious on the
let them know
time.
that you guys are interested in that, in maybe making it a little tighter.
And I do think, honestly, Mr. Maroney's suggestion on putting something around distance moved or around that is not a bad idea.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right. Okay, so if that's consensus of the commission, then I'll convey that to the attorney's office, and we'll get back to you on this.
Any other suggestions? Good. I think that's a good.
Thanks, Richard.
Yep, thank
Thank
you.
you, Richard.
Thank you.
All righty, item D, discussion regarding various proposed zoning amendments. Staff was requested to bring forward a discussion item at the last meeting related to building elevation. Staff also has a couple of items from various sections of the zoning ordinance that needs to be reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Sylvia?
It's your night.
That's me. All right, here we go. So I did bring a couple of our discussion items. As you know, we have a little list kind of going, so I try to bring a few at a time to not overwhelm everybody. So we did have a request to bring the elevations to discuss, and then, as you mentioned, I had some on the little laundry list of 6-foot separation requirements and allowance for awnings and patio covers to be placed within the setbacks. I'm not going to lie, I put elevations at the end of this PowerPoint so we can focus on that a little more at the end. Okay, so for 6-foot separation requirements, the zoning ordinance currently requires a 6-foot separation between any buildings and accessory structures. The issue is there has been many times when an accessory structure could not be constructed due to a 6-foot setback requirement, but in a couple of places, the property owner would propose a breezeway to keep the building attached, therefore to meet the setbacks. So there was more than one time that this has occurred, and so sometimes when I get this little list going, it's because I've seen the same thing over and over while building permit reviews and said, hey, maybe we better look at this. So after discussion with the building official, it does not appear that a 6-foot separation is required under the building code. No separation requirement is necessary. So what we can do is amend the zoning ordinance to eliminate the separation requirements. And so this is related to like sheds, detached garages. Yeah, they make them attached by breezeway, but so the action needed is the related zoning ordinance sections could be amended to eliminate separation requirements. This is just a little example. I could not find an exact picture, but this is what happens sometimes when we say you can't meet the setbacks because you have the 6-foot separation, so therefore somebody will attach it with a little breezeway, and then they make so it just, we know that it doesn't really make this point. And then there was one more that had a similar situation. But that's pretty much all I had on the 6-foot separation. You want me to stop right there and pause with that?
Do you want us to do these individually? Or
Sure.
make a comment, or-
Yeah, we can do that as we go along, see if you have any comments.
Well, I'm familiar with the county building code, and on an accessory structure, you can go almost like right up against an accessory structure without it actually being attached. And how they get away with that is they have what you call a fireboard. Like if it's a garage or, a gazebo or something like that, it's just that fireboard. And I think that's in the building code.
How it's constructed.
Yeah, how it's constructed. I think that's a building code. And that's what, the county does, where you can get away from like the breezeways and stuff. And especially if, if you've got your property and it's kind of tight, and it works.
Right, and there's been a couple times where they just needed, they could have been separated by 4 feet.
Yeah.
It was like, well.
Kind of sounds like in that scenario, they're trying to do, it's the same thing, just trying to come up with some way to.
Yeah.
And I don't have any issue with eliminating it, it's just.
I don't either,
Okay, so therefore, in this situation, did anybody else have questions? I'm sorry. Then I can bring back a text
maybe
amendment at the
review
end.
the building code.
Right.
And see about the fire break, the wall.
Yeah, and Vice Chair, that's the discussion I had with Assistant Fire Chief Keith Eaton before went on vacation, otherwise he'd be here tonight. And those were the things we discussed. Would it be an issue with fire, life safety, building? And no, because you're hitting the points.
Right, yeah. And I think
Because really,
You're not looking for us to make
No.
Okay, gotcha. Yep.
Tonight, we're discussing it, and at the end of this discussion, you can make a comment whether you'd like to bring back a text amendment next month.
because I guess as the separation requirement, we don't have one for storage sheds to be so far away from a house right now either, do we? And would,
6 feet.
It would fall under accessory structure if it's over 200 square foot in size. We'd have the permit come in for it, and then it would have the 6-foot separation. And then have to meet the other setbacks, which is meet the side setbacks, and it go forward to the rear of the property. Okay, so we'll go into the next one then. Next discussion is awnings and patio covers. The zoning ordinance currently does not allow for awnings and patio covers to be within the setbacks. The issue here is there have been many times when an applicant has proposed an awning or patio cover to provide more shade to their home and could not construct it due to not being able to meet the setback requirements. Again, after discussing with the acting building official, an awning or patio cover could be allowed within the front and rear setbacks without being a fire hazard, but the side setbacks should be met. So I think it's front and rear, right? They can be in the front and rear setbacks. Propose amending the zoning ordinance to allow for awnings and patio covers to be within the front and rear setback as long as constructed with non-combustible material. Allow lots that abut open space, no setback requirement, and I will explain that in another slide. So here's a couple photos, and it was funny, because even as staff, I was going back and forth with even Rich. It's like, well, what are we calling an awning, and what are we calling a patio cover? So I even had to clarify myself. And actually, the building inspector that was here earlier helped me clarify. So we're not really talking about these awnings that are projected and attached to the home. More so, we're talking about the awnings that have the posts. So here's another example of the patio covers with the posts. And as long as they're constructed with non-combustible material, then it's not an issue to allow them within the front or rear setback. I did have a situation where there was one home that was built on R140, so you'd think there's plenty of room, but it was built on an angle, so the corner of the home was exactly at the front setback of 30 feet, and he wanted to put the awning along the front to, have shade, but I couldn't allow it at this one point of the home, so they just staggered it down and started, but it was kind of like, do we really need to do this? So there was more than one situation like this, and that's why we're bringing this up today. And the only other one, these are just actually more examples of awnings. The only other situations we've had was if it's a lot against like the golf course that you saw earlier, and there's nothing in the back but the golf course, then in those cases, they can probably go up to the rear property line. There is nothing on the other side. So there's a couple options as far as the setbacks. We could allow them to go to 0 rear property line when there's open space in the back, or use what we require for accessory structures, the 4-foot requirement for the rear, but still have to meet the side setback.
The 5 foot on the side and 4 in the rear.
Right, and it's more common in the rear to have these go into the setbacks. Every now and then it's the front, but it's more common in the rear.
So, Sylvia, those scenarios you just described, is that when you have this written with certain conditions? Is that what you're alluding to, those type things, is certain conditions, or do you have other thoughts?
Correct, yes. I realized I didn't spell them out on the PowerPoint, but those were some of the things I was thinking.
Okay.
And I think, did I make any more?
I think
So that's really all that I have on awnings or covers.
I think me personally, if we just follow along with our accessory structures, 5 feet on the side and 4 feet on the rear, I think that would probably suffice for most, personally. I mean, it's already following what we already have, so we wouldn't be making any specific changes.
So if you had that scenario you just described right there on the golf course, and we had that 4 foot, wouldn't be allowed up to the property line, but if someone had one of those scenarios and we wanted to consider it, would it be then a CUP type situation, or what would that be?
Well, the situation I'm thinking of is very similar to the townhomes we just saw, where they didn't have much of a rear backyard, period. And so there's not much left. I don't even know if they could make 4 feet, honestly. And so in those cases, it would be a 0 setback. And we would be looking at where the posts are, even for the 4 foot setback situation, would be where the posts are, not where it overhangs. I'm not sure what to do with the one on the golf course, like you're saying, if we should do a CUP for that, but it sounds like a possibility. There's not too many that have homes against open space, though, honestly, either.
Right?
I think a lot of it might work itself out, too, because on the larger homes, I'm not foreseeing. I mean, nothing surprises me when they attach it to the home and it going all the way to the back. So some things kind of work itself out, but.
I mean, yeah, even to go 4 feet from the rear property line, most homes, you're 20, 30 feet away from the property line. So like you say, I doubt, but.
Okay.
Yeah, and the only time I can possibly think of it is if somebody built the detached garage at the rear and they wanted to add some shade to it, so that might have the rear
What if there was a
setback.
pool in the yard and they wanted to put one of those big pool covers over?
That could be, right?
So the 4 foot and 5 would follow
It would
if we want to
fall
go that
right
route.
into that,
Yeah,
Yeah, because you can put your pool.
yeah, that's a point. Probably.
Do you have any suggestions for the front? Because at this point, we're just going by what the zoning district allows for each section. So we could just use a 20-foot front setback as an example, but how much towards the front would we allow?
Right.
That's the only one I haven't really played with as much because I've had less of that issue
Well,
than
if
the
you
rear.
consider, well,
Now, would it just be like an awning? Okay, you know, because they have like those metal carports and stuff, and say you have a 20-foot setback and your garage is right there, and then you put one of those metal awnings, you know,
Yeah,
in there.
I don't think we're looking at carports. More so these type of awnings.
Okay.
More this like this type is what we're looking for.
Okay.
Yeah, touch carports. I think we'd still go by the setback requirements. We can clarify that as well.
Yeah.
well, I think there was a good comment on the photo before where it said as long as it was built with non-combustible materials.
Correct. And I did happen to speak to one of the awning builders in town coincidentally yesterday, and I asked him if he could come, but he didn't make it tonight. It was too short notice. But he did mention that there was a lot of times where he had lost business just because it was just a little, just a little into the setback, or something like that. So it is kind of a common problem out there.
I kind of like that for the front. I kind of like, if that's what we're looking for the front, not, it wouldn't be an issue if as long as it's constructed with non-combustible material,
I see. Right.
if we want to throw that in there.
Okay. All right, so that's pretty much, is there any more questions on this particular one? Okay, so the last one is elevations, building elevations. Right now, the zoning ordinance doesn't regulate building elevations, only the exterior appearance criteria, which is a little different. The issue is that single-family residential homes are being built in new subdivisions which look the same and often are called cookie-cutter subdivisions. The proposal would be to amend the zoning ordinance to require new residential structures to have building elevations that do not look the same as the neighboring residence. Now, how we accomplish that, that's what we're going to discuss tonight. So a little history, I had a little time to Google around, but cookie-cutter subdivisions basically are tract home subdivisions that began in the early 50s, basically due to a shortage of homes. The developers were able to produce mass neighborhoods quickly for less money by using the same home models and materials. And basically that's continued. Nationally, the practice of tract home development continues, but it's slowly being replaced by mixed-use developments that have more requirements. You would mix your commercial with residential, or have a mixture of small lots and larger lots, and a requirement for open space. And I just kind of found it a little interesting. So whether or not it's the same tract home or mixed use, basically you still were able to do the 200 lots. It's just, it was arranged differently, and you had like a park or something like that. Now, I'm not saying that's the way to go, but nationally that's what they're doing. Some general facts: most of the new homes are being built in newly recorded subdivisions and infill of older subdivisions. The infill of older subdivisions seems less problematic because usually different contractors are building various home models on different lots, not typically side by side. Those who are developer builders of subdivisions tend to use the same models, paint schemes, and landscape design within their subdivisions due to the same thing: cost efficiency and mass production. So one possibility is to require developer builders or home builders who are building so many lots, I just kind of put 3 out there, or more homes in the same location, to stagger home models or the exterior front design of a home, paint colors, alternate right and left models, or just stagger the home placement itself. Because even though we have a 20-foot setback, it could be either farther or back 5 foot back, or I don't know, just stagger them and make them right and left so that there's some difference. These are just some interesting pictures that I found on the internet, and this subdivision in particular was advertising that they are not a cookie cutter home, that they offer different models, they're all new. So that was actually their selling point. And this is what we visualize with the cookie cutter homes. So they're everywhere. This one happens to be in China. But basically that's where I'm at right now. What ideas do you have? If you're interested in having an elevation ordinance amendment, I'd like to hear some suggestions so I can go forward and research or bring something back to you.
Well, I just I just think, because we got numerous builders, and as we drive around town, they're building their same homes in so many acreage, and I believe they're just starting to look cookie cutter. And I don't know that that's an attractive appearance that we would like to maybe see a change as residents here, because I don't know that everybody would wants to see the same home built one after another in our communities. I think everybody probably does like a little variance and color variations, I'm assuming.
Oh, I think I'm with you on that. Actually, Sylvia, when you had that bottom bullet point up there about we could require X, Y, Z, and the different ones, I'm like, sure, any one of them, take a pick. They all look to be at least one of them probably acceptable deviations as you go from home to home.
Right?
Yeah, all those, like, yeah, okay, yeah, sounds good.
This is your expertise.
One of the ways that you can fulfill that is the pitch of the roof, like gable versus, I mean, you can have a pitch or a gable, and that will change the aesthetics of it completely. And that's what they've been
Switch
doing
the
up in
garage, right
up in
garage, left garage.
Rancho. I mean, up in your area. You'll find that the pitch of the roof is different. Then you don't have to change up the size as much.
Yeah, I think even colors do it too. I mean, sometimes you can see where you have to look subtly to see it's the exact same home model built side by side, but the colors are enough of a disparity that it still jumps out. I think really any of those are all open.
Acceptable. So then for clarification, because then there was the two types of builders, the ones that are, creating the subdivision and building the homes, and then there's the ones doing the infill. Sometimes they get a whole block, sometimes they only do one. So in some cases, there will be maybe 4 or 5 homes all the same. But I don't know if we're really wanting to go there or just the new subdivision.
No, I think on those, even those, Sylvia, though, if it is the same 4 or 5 homes, if you had something subtle around paint colors or something like that, at least there's some difference to them. It's not like 5 exact red houses right, I mean.
Or the same model right next to each other. It would have to, I think, have
Or flip the garages.
I mean,
Have a right garage and a left garage and have the same model, and it kind of changes things up too.
Okay.
And I can appreciate you bringing that up, because the first thing people think of when you see the homes looking like a whole street of the same homes is you think, oh, this is like a rental street or something. So,
Right.
I mean, so I think that's.
Okay. So at least I have some ideas there. Really, at this point, you can ask me to bring back research on any of these topics or take no action, or make a motion for staff to draft a text amendment to one of them, 2 of them, all 3 of them. So it's up to
I'll
you at
make a
this point.
motion for a text amendment for the accessory structures, just to have, a fire break wall between it.
I think on this one, Sylvia, I think if you could bring back number 3 there for bringing back the draft text amendment. If you want to do number 1, to take a look around to see what else you would, how to structure that text amendment, maybe the 2 of those together.
we have a motion on the table,
Oh, I'm
so
sorry, my bad. Yep.
do I have a second, or is we,
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second's been made. Is there any discussion on the?
That's
And that's for the.
the accessory
The
structure.
accessory structure, yeah, that can be, 6 inches apart or up against with flashing or whatever.
You're talking the 6-foot separation requirement?
Right.
Yeah,
So you want to eliminate,
yeah.
so do you want to
It's not a requirement,
so do you want to readdress your motion so we can get a clarification, please?
Yeah, my motion is to take away the 6-foot requirement between accessory structures. Just have some sort of a firewall break between the structure that is being built.
Okay, to clarify, to propose a text amendment to remove the 6-foot separation requirement.
Yes.
And
I have a
I
motion.
second. No, I second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah. So if, assuming that the accessory structure is not up against another building or something, is it still going to be required to have firewall or not?
Should.
Or are we talking common sense and in the instance that it is against another structure, that's when you build the firewall?
Well, even if it was like just a foot away, it should have that firewall as a
And
break.
if it's 2 foot?
A break, yeah, firewall. Yeah, just do that. The firewall, it's just thicker drywall on that wall that's basic, whatever.
So then, do we,
See, what I find is it's easy to spend somebody else's money with these things without some more clear
Yeah.
understanding of what
Well,
it's
that's
for.
actually a building code. If you're gonna have an accessory structure that close to, like, say, your residence and you're building a garage or something like that, it's actually a
It
building.
is already in the code, so I'm
It's
not
already
quite
in-
sure why
Yeah,
you want
that's
to
way,
do.
if it's in the code, then that way it's easier for them to, when someone's applying for a permit, then it can just, it's already there.
okay, since we already have a motion and a second out there, the question would be then, if I'm allowed to make a question, is there a fire code?
It's just a building code.
Is there in the building code now to have a fire-proof wall, is I guess what we're asking, Scott?
There is a regulation for firewalls on joint structures, like between your house and your garage, you have a firewall. If you have
Separate,
duplex, you have firewalls, if they share.
right. So then, do you want to amend?
Chairman, Commissioners, definitely not the building code expert, but I do know that a permit will be required for these accessory structures. And if it's required, the building department would implement that
Yeah.
rule.
It's just
So I
already
don't
built
think you
in.
need in your motion
Okay, just take away the 6
So-
foot,
the firewall.
Maybe the motion should just be withdrawn.
Should be
If
just,
that's what,
Do I make that motion to withdraw, or we have?
no, I think Commissioner Ward.
Okay, I will withdraw that motion and just say that the 6 foot setback between accessory structures,
should be eliminated.
eliminate it, just eliminate it.
Okay, we have a motion, do I have a second?
Yes, I second it.
Any further discussion?
Just want to make sure we're clear. We're okay to do that procedurally? Yep, okay.
Okay, may I ask for a roll call vote, please? In favor?
In favor.
In favor?
Ever.
In favor?
All right, so we have the 6 foot separation requirement. What passed. Now we need to discuss or whatever we're going to come up with for allowance for awnings and patio covers.
Yep, so Chairman and Commissioners, so next month I'll be bringing back the actual proposed text amendment for the
Okay.
6 foot separation.
Okay,
And now at this point, I just need to know what to do with the awnings, whether we want to propose a text amendment to that for next month, or you need more discussion on that, and then also the building elevation item.
I think we need more information.
On the awnings, or,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, clarification.
do we
More-
want to
more
make a motion on the awnings? Do we have any
I think we-
clarification, or do we want?
We need more clarification on that, or?
On the awnings?
Move forward?
I don't.
Yeah, okay,
You know,
great.
I think it's pretty obvious, it's, people want to put up an awning, it's not actually a structure, and if it's, non-flammable material, I think.
Correct.
And did they talk about already? I'm tired, but the front yard, did that get brought up? I mean, the front
Commissioner,
setbacks?
to clarify, it was the allowing awnings and patio covers in the front and rear setbacks, and the side would have to be kept still.
So you need a text amendment for the rear setback and the side?
I would need somebody to propose a text amendment to allow the awnings or setbacks in the rear or front setback.
Rear and
And I would bring that
front.
back next month.
True, but if we choose to propose that, she would bring it back next month,
Correct.
and we can discuss it at that
As a- yeah,
time
as a
and
text
take a look at it and see how it is.
That would be good. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to propose that you do that. Sylvia proposed that you bring back a text amendment on this subject.
Yes.
I'll second it.
Okay. And
We don't need to make a motion on that, do we?
that one's the motion for a text amendment.
Correct.
All right, do I have a motion?
Yeah.
Second.
Yeah.
He motioned, she seconded.
Seconded.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. In favor?
Yeah, I'll stay in favor on that one.
In favor?
Aye.
In favor.
Right, Chairman, I just need direction on building elevations. If you'd like me to bring back research or
I think so.
bring back research.
Definitely,
Okay, so
definitely.
that we don't need a motion for, I just.
Oh,
need
good.
direction. Okay, so just for clarification, you were interested in those items I did
Yes.
mention, but
Your number 3 on there looks to be good places to start, and then just, if you see something that jumps out at you, Sylvia, when you're doing research, it looks common from other ones,
all right,
obviously you can weight that in the research, I think.
okay, I will bring you back more research on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you. Good job.
All right, item number 6, announcements by commission members. Limited to announcements, availability, or attendance at conferences and seminars, requests for agenda items for future meetings, and requests for reports from staff. No discussion on any of these items.
Is there a meeting the end of this month or
That's
something?
what I was going to mention. Are we still doing on the, isn't it the 26th?
26 at 5:30 here in this room, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
There's a meeting with, what is it now?
Historic
Historic.
preservation?
It's a joint commission.
Historic
It's a joint.
meeting here in this room, 5:30 on the 26th, I believe.
Is it the 26th or the 19th?
She's here the
26th.
26th.
Is the end of the
26th,
month.
that's what I put down in. Maybe I got it wrong.
As long as it's 26th, I think I'm okay. If it's the 19th, I'll be in London, so that's not happening. But
I believe it's the 26th.
26th is what I have.
That's what I have too.
All right, may I have a motion for adjournment?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I will second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Yeah.